Get ready for a shocking story. Subscribe and like so you don't miss new videos. Nearly a year had passed since Maya's father disappeared without a trace. The community had long accepted the grim reality. He was gone, lost to the silence of the unknown. Officially declared dead, his name was gradually fading from conversations, replaced by the routine of daily life. Yet beneath the surface of this quiet acceptance, something lingered, an unshakable feeling that the truth was still buried, waiting to be uncovered. Maya was only 6 when her father vanished. At that age, the world is seen through a veil of innocence and wonder. But for Maya, the disappearance marked the beginning of a silent struggle. She rarely spoke of her father, and when asked, her answers were hesitant, often avoiding the subject altogether. Her mother insisted that he had abandoned them, leaving without explanation or warning. "He's not coming back," her mother would say, her voice cold and resolute, pushing Maya to accept the loss and move on. But Maya's heart told a different story. She spent long hours sitting quietly, staring at the floorboards of their living room, as if trying to peer through the layers of wood and concrete. When no one was watching, she would whisper soft words to the empty space beneath her feet, as though hoping to reach the father she believed was still there. Her small hands often cradled a crayon, and on sheets of paper she sketched strange and haunting images. Dark shadows lurking beneath the house, stick figures marked with red lines, and outlines that suggested something hidden in the floor. Her grandparents noticed these drawings and the eerie silence that had settled over Maya. Concerned, they gently asked her about the pictures, but Maya remained silent, unwilling or unable to explain. The adults around her dismissed the images as the fanciful imaginings of a grieving child, too young to understand the finality of death. They saw only trauma and confusion, not the sharp insight concealed within her quiet whispers and cryptic drawings. The custody hearing marked a turning point. Maya's mother was fighting for full custody and pressing to close the missing persons case once and for all. The courtroom was tense, filled with legal professionals, family members, and curious onlookers. When the judge asked if anyone had anything further to add, the room fell silent. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Maya spoke. "Daddy isn't dead," she said, her eyes steady and calm. "He's under the floor, in the dark spot where Mommy put the boxes." The courtroom froze. The judge paused mid-sentence, his gaze shifting between the girl and the adults seated around him. Whispers rippled through the room, a mix of disbelief and unease. Could a 6-year-old truly know something no one else had uncovered? Was this simply a child's fantasy, or a chilling clue that demanded attention? One officer in the room felt a cold knot of suspicion tighten in his chest. Something about Maya's words resonated deeply, refusing to be dismissed. By the next morning, a team had returned to the house, this time armed with a specially trained cadaver dog. The dog's sharp barks and focused sniffing honed in on a specific section of the living room floor. Its behavior was unmistakable, a trained signal that human remains might be present. Despite protests from Maya's mother, who insisted there was nothing beneath the floor except insulation and dirt, the authorities pressed forward. Ground-penetrating radar was brought in to scan the area. The live images revealed a disturbing shape, a curled outline unmistakably resembling a human body. As the day wore on, neighbors gathered behind caution tape, watching in stunned silence as the living room floor was painstakingly excavated. Tiles were removed, concrete chipped away, and layers of dirt uncovered. Then came the discovery that shattered the fragile calm. The partially wrapped body of Maya's father concealed beneath the ground they had all stood upon for so long. The evidence was clear and horrifying. An autopsy revealed blunt force trauma to the skull, confirming a violent end. Forensic investigators determined the body had been hastily hidden shortly after the fatal injury, with the time of death matching the date of his disappearance. It was not an accident or a simple vanishing. It was murder. In that moment, the quiet courage of a little girl had pierced through layers of denial and concealment, exposing a dark and painful truth that no one else had dared to face. The courtroom remained tense long after Maya's whispered revelation. The judge, attorneys, and spectators struggled to process the sudden shift from a routine custody hearing to a chilling investigation unfolding beneath their feet. Maya's mother sat rigid, her face pale but defiant, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. The weight of suspicion hung heavily in the air. Maya was taken in by her grandparents, who had insisted on caring for her while the case unfolded. In their warm, quiet home, far from the cold glare of the courtroom, Maya found a fragile sense of safety. Yet beneath that surface, the trauma she carried was deep and raw. Her nights were haunted by shadows, and her drawings grew darker, more detailed, as if she was trying to communicate something urgent, something adults still wouldn't hear. The investigation moved quickly once the body was discovered. Police combed through the family's history, searching for motives and evidence. Bloodstains were found beneath the subfloor, connecting the mother directly to the crime scene. Items were missing, among them a hammer believed to be the murder weapon. It was never recovered, adding another layer of mystery and frustration to the case. Maya's mother was arrested as she attempted to flee the state. At a bus terminal, officers found her carrying forged identification, a burner phone, large sums of cash, and hastily packed bags. It was clear she had been pecked for share, planning her escape for some time. When questioned, she remained silent, refusing to confess or provide explanations. Her cold silence only deepened suspicions. Throughout the legal proceedings, Maya's video testimony was played for the court. Her voice was soft but unwavering. "He used to sing to me at night," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "Then I heard him cry from under the floor." The drawings she made were presented as evidence. Crude but powerful images of red marks, stick figures trapped beneath the house, and dark shadows lurking in the corners. Experts in child psychology testified about Maya's unique ability to convey trauma through art and silence. They emphasized the importance of truly listening to children, recognizing that their fragmented words and drawings often hold keys to hidden truths. Maya's case became a pivotal example in workshops and training sessions nationwide, reshaping how law enforcement and counselors approach cases involving young children. The media seized on the story, captivated by the haunting innocence of a child who had unveiled a terrible secret. Headlines called it one of the most disturbing child-led investigations in recent history. Yet, beyond the sensationalism, the heart of the story was clear. Maya's courage, quiet but fierce, had broken through a wall of silence and deception. The trial ended with Maya's mother receiving a life sentence for first-degree murder, obstruction of justice, and evidence tampering. The judge denied any possibility of parole, condemning her to spend the rest of her life behind bars. In his closing statement, he praised Maya's bravery, calling her testimony the crucial factor that brought justice. Now, away from the shadows of the past, Maya slowly began to reclaim her childhood. Surrounded by her grandparents' love and care, she attended regular therapy sessions to help process the trauma she endured. Step by step, she learned to laugh again, to feel safe, and to trust the world around her. Her story left an indelible mark, not just on those who followed the case, but on the entire nation. It served as a stark reminder that the smallest voices often carry the loudest truths, and that listening with empathy and attention can make all the difference. In the weeks following the shocking discovery beneath the floorboards, the small town where Maya and her family live was engulfed in a wave of disbelief and sorrow. Neighbors who had once exchanged casual greetings now whispered behind closed doors, grappling with the reality that a murder had taken place so close to home, hidden beneath the very floors they walked on every day. The quiet streets bore the weight of a secret that seemed impossible to believe, but undeniable in its truth. Law enforcement agencies continued their thorough investigation, piecing together the fragmented timeline leading to the murder. Detectives delved deep into the mother's past, uncovering troubling patterns of deceit and manipulation. Her attempts to cover her tracks became evident as they traced the forged documents, the burner phone usage, and the sudden bursts of cash withdrawals. Every step painted a portrait of a woman determined to erase the existence of her husband and silence the truth. Meanwhile, Maya's drawings became central to the investigation's narrative. Child psychologists and forensic experts analyzed the sketches with great care, noting how the red marks and shadowy figures symbolized the violence and fear Maya could not yet fully articulate. These images were more than mere drawings. They were a language of trauma, a desperate cry from a child who witnessed horrors beyond her years. At therapy sessions, Maya's therapist encouraged her to express herself through art and storytelling. Slowly, the walls Maya had built around her pain began to crumble. With each drawing and whispered memory, she reclaimed fragments of her father's presence, the warmth of his voice, the safety of his embrace, and the cruel silence that followed his disappearance. As the community grappled with the tragedy, a larger conversation began to emerge about how society treats the voices of children. Maya's case ignited a movement among social workers, law enforcement, and legal professionals to re-examine past cases where children's testimonies had been dismissed or overlooked. Training programs were updated to emphasize patience and trust in children's words, recognizing that their insights, even when whispered or masked in silence, can be vital clues. Schools began incorporating lessons on emotional intelligence and communication, helping children feel heard and understood. Counselors encouraged parents to pay closer attention to the subtle signs of distress in their children, advocating for a more compassionate and vigilant approach to child welfare. Maya's courage sparked a nationwide call to listen, not just with ears, but with hearts. For Maya, life was slowly finding its rhythm again, but the scars remained. The love and support of her grandparents provided a sanctuary where she could grow, heal, and dream. She began attending a new school, making tentative friendships and rediscovering the joys of childhood that had been stolen from her. Her laughter, once rare, started to echo more often in the halls of her new home. Yet even in moments of happiness, Maya's mind sometimes drifted back to the floorboards, the dark spot where her father's secret lay buried. It was a reminder of the darkness she had faced, but also a testament to her bravery. Through whispered words, haunting drawings, and unyielding hope, she had spoken the truth that changed everything. Months passed since the court's verdict, but the ripple effects of Maya's story continued to spread far beyond the small town where the tragedy unfolded. News outlets across the country had covered the case extensively, turning it into a powerful symbol of the importance of listening to children. Voices often overlooked or dismissed. Maya's courage sparked widespread discussions in communities, schools, and law enforcement agencies about how to better protect the most vulnerable. At the heart of this change was a growing recognition. Children's words, no matter how softly spoken or fragmented, carry weight. For too long, society had dismissed the quiet testimonies of children as fantasy or confusion, but Maya's case became a turning point. Workshops and training sessions for police officers, social workers, and legal professionals began incorporating her story, teaching them how to identify and interpret children's clues with sensitivity and care. Counselors and child psychologists used Maya's drawings and testimony as a blueprint to better understand how children process trauma. They emphasized the need to create safe spaces where children feel comfortable expressing fears and suspicions, even if their words seem unclear or inconsistent. Maya's experience underscored the critical role of patience and trust in unraveling hidden truths. Meanwhile, lawmakers began reviewing policies related to missing persons and child custody cases. Some jurisdictions introduced stricter protocols requiring thorough re-examinations of cold cases where children had once hinted at undisclosed information. The hope was to prevent other families from suffering in silence, ensuring no voice would go unheard simply because it came from a child. Back in her new home with her grandparents, Maya was slowly rebuilding her sense of normalcy. Therapy remained a cornerstone of her healing process. Her therapist worked gently with her to explore her feelings, helping her find ways to cope with the pain while nurturing hope for the future. Art therapy, storytelling, and play became tools for Maya to reclaim her childhood and regain trust in the world. Her grandparents provided unwavering support, surrounding her with love and stability. They understood the delicate balance between encouraging Maya's strength and respecting the vulnerability she carried. Family outings, school activities, and quiet evenings together helped Maya feel grounded, even as the shadows of the past lingered in her memory. Though the road ahead was still long, Maya's progress was a testament to resilience. Her story had not only uncovered a terrible crime, but also sparked a movement that would change how society listens to and values children's voices forever. As the months turned into a year, the echoes of Maya's story continued to shape conversations across the country. Her courage inspired countless families, professionals, and communities to rethink how they listen to children, especially those who suffer in silence. Maya's case became a catalyst for change, driving improvements in child advocacy and criminal investigations. National organizations focused on child welfare and justice launched new initiatives designed to strengthen support for young witnesses and victims. Specialized training programs for law enforcement officers now included modules on interpreting children's drawings, recognizing signs of trauma, and conducting interviews with empathy and patience. These changes aimed to prevent other cases like Maya's from being overlooked. Meanwhile, Maya herself was slowly blossoming into a confident young girl. Surrounded by her grandparents' love and care, she found joy in small everyday moments, playing with friends, exploring her new school, and expressing herself through art and music. Her therapy sessions continued to help her process the past, teaching her that healing is a journey, not a destination. Despite the trauma, Maya held on to the memory of her father, not just as a victim, but as a source of comfort and strength. Her drawings evolved, filled with colors and images of hope and renewal. She began to share her story carefully, sometimes with close friends or trusted adults, helping others understand the power of listening to even the quietest voices. The legal system's response to Maya's mother set a strong precedent, signaling zero tolerance for abuse, neglect, and attempts to silence the truth. The life sentence she received reflected the severity of her crimes and the justice sought for Maya's father and family. Community members felt a mix of relief and sorrow, grateful for the closure, but deeply aware of the lasting scars left behind. Through it all, Maya's story reminded everyone that courage comes in many forms. Sometimes it is the softest whisper, the smallest drawing, or the quietest voice that breaks the hardest silence. And sometimes, listening with an open heart is the most powerful act of all. In the aftermath of the trial and the life sentence handed down to Maya's mother, the community slowly began to heal. The shock of the case lingered, but it also sparked a renewed commitment to protecting children and preventing similar tragedies. Local organizations, inspired by Maya's story, started outreach programs aimed at educating parents, teachers, and neighbors about recognizing signs of abuse and trauma in children. Maya's grandparents became active advocates themselves. They spoke at schools, community centers, and law enforcement training sessions, sharing Maya's story and emphasizing the importance of listening to children with compassion and seriousness. Their hope was to ensure no child would ever feel ignored or unheard like Maya once had. For Maya, life gradually started to feel less like a nightmare and more like a chance at a new beginning. Her therapy evolved as she grew older, shifting from immediate trauma care to long-term support focused on resilience and empowerment. She learned to trust again, to build relationships, and to envision a future filled with possibilities. Her story continued to be referenced in legal circles, child psychology seminars, and law enforcement workshops across the country. Maya's case became a landmark example of how crucial it is to pay attention to children's voices in investigations and custody disputes. The justice system began adapting, incorporating child-centered practices and trauma-informed care to improve outcomes for young victims. Though the scars of the past would never fully fade, Maya's strength and courage inspired those around her. She had transformed from a frightened, silent child into a symbol of hope and resilience. Her whispered truth had broken through walls of silence and deception, shining a light on the darkest corners of human cruelty. And above all, Maya's story reminded the world of a vital truth. Sometimes the smallest voices carry the loudest cries for justice, and the greatest courage lies in listening. Listen closely. Sometimes the smallest voices hold the biggest truths. If Maya's story touched you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share so more people can hear stories that matter. Drop a comment below and tell us what you think.